I got invited to play in one of the most stacked VGC draft leagues of all time. I'll be up against titans of the game like NAIC champion Federico Camporese, 3-time regional champions Michael Kelch and Justin Tang, and Single Battles legend Pokeaim, fighting over 10 weeks for a cash prize and ultimate bragging rights. Welcome to the MDBL.
How are we doing, everyone? Welcome to the final week of Phase 2 of the MDBL. So this is the last match of the group phases, and I am already guaranteed to go through no matter what the outcome of this match is. So if we have a look at the standings here before this match starts, I am currently at the top. There's only one other person at a 5-2 record, but my game difference is keeping me ahead. And in fact, there is only one person here who can overtake me. So the primary factor in standings in the group phases is obviously your overall record. So people at 5-2 are ahead of people at 4-3 and so on. But the first tiebreaker is game difference. And you can see here that I have won 12 games and lost 5 over the course of the last 7 weeks. So that puts me currently at more games won and fewer games lost than anyone else in the tournament. And in fact, the worst case scenario for me after this week is if I lose 2-0 here, then I end up at a 5-3 record with a 12-7 game win-loss. So a game difference of +5. So Mount can overtake me if he wins his match and I lose mine. But no one else can physically overtake me because the best game difference that anyone else in the league can get at a 5-3 record is going to be 12 games won and 8 games lost, which is a +4 record, which is worse than my worst case scenario of +5. So I'm guaranteed at least second now. And what that means is that there's just a bit less pressure on me this week because I'm already guaranteed playoffs. Obviously, I'll try my hardest to win. 1, for pride's sake, and also 2, it'd be unfair to people I've already played if I suddenly just don't try in the last week. But overall, I'm feeling obviously pretty relaxed about this match, given the outcome doesn't make too much difference. On the other hand, this match does make a lot of difference for Collin Heier, aka the Battle Room, who's my opponent for this final week. Collin is, like pretty much everyone else at the moment, at a 4-3 record, but he does currently have the worst game difference. So he needs to beat me and then hope that some other results go his way in the other games in this league to have a chance, so he will be fighting very hard for a 2-0 win. He definitely has the tools to do it as well. Let's have a quick look at what his team looks like. So you can see he's got a core that's kind of reminiscent of a couple of different archetypes that we've seen in VGC. Not really mashed together, that's the wrong way of phrasing it, but he's got a bunch of different options for archetypes he can run. So the primary one is the Gouging Fire, Ogerpon Wellspring, King Gambit, kind of physical spam with Howl. So the first one we can look at is the Gouging Fire core alongside physical attackers like Ogerpon Wellspring, King Gambit, Slitherwing, even Rhydon to an extent, where kind of the standard game mode with that set of Pokemon is to bring out Gouging Fire, click Howl to boost the physical attack of all your Pokemon. You've got King Gambit as a deterrent against any Intimidate users or anyone who might want to click Breaking Swipe or anything like that. And then you just put on increasing pressure with your physical attackers until you break through your opponent. Obviously, that's not the only thing you can do with those Pokemon. Gouging Fire could also run a Dragon Dance set, or you could maybe run a Choice Band if you're feeling particularly bold. That's one thing I looked at in testing is, in order for Gouging Fire to be able to one-shot in DD, you need to go for Terra Fire, Banded, Heat Crash or Flare Blitz to KO, but the core that we see in VGC with those kind of Pokemon is generally that Howl Spam, Breaking Swipe, Speed Booster Energy, Gouging Fire set. The other obvious archetype available to him is that snow pairing of Alolan Ninetales and Articuno. Alolan Ninetales sets up the snow weather condition when it switches in, and then Articuno can make the most of that with its Snow Cloak ability, increasing its evasiveness, and also perfect accuracy on blizzards, being able to spam spread ice moves, chances to freeze. A lot of factors that will weight RNG in Collin's favour if I let that happen. But Ninetales can also work with other Pokemon on this team as a screen setter with its Aurora Veil move, setting up both Reflect and Light Screen. And then something like Galarian Moltres or King Gambit can make the most of that with setup. Even Swords Dance on Ogerpon is an option there. Rhydon's also a surprisingly annoying Pokemon for a lot of my team because it underspeeds everything on my team apart from Torkoal, which means that in Trick Room, it can be a little bit tricky to get around, but at the same time, I definitely have ways around it, so it's not too awful. I'm expecting into my team that Collin will want Galarian Moltres to play a pretty pivotal role. It's got great special bulk, good offensive typing into a lot of my team. I've got a lot of dark and flying weaknesses, so that is something I'm definitely going to have to play around, something that I'm 100% expecting will be coming from his side. Beyond that, I don't think Articuno comes to this game. I've got Torkoal, I've got fire types that can sit in front of it. So it's definitely an option that he can bring, but I think it's not that likely. I think it's more likely he's going to favor the Ogerpon Gouging Fire King Gambit mode over bringing Articuno. And then I think it's likely Rhydon will come and potentially Slitherwing. Maybe Articuno could fill that last slot instead of Slitherwing, for example. But that's mostly what I'm expecting to see from Collin this week. And now let's have a look at what I am bringing to this match. So what I'm bringing this week is a little bit surprising in that it's very unsurprising. So in previous weeks, I've been playing around with what sets Pokemon can use, different items, that kind of thing, messing around with abilities on Pokemon that have different options for them. This week, though, I'm doing pretty much exactly what you'd expect might come out if you're looking at my team. And that's going to be a heavy emphasis on Trick Room and using my Psy Spam Pokemon to try and break through my opponent. And there are a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, I've actually not used full hard Trick Room at any point this season, which is odd because if you look at my draft, you'd expect that that would be one of the key things I lean into, but I've actually not really lent on it that hard. The reason I'm doing it this week is that, firstly, I've not had a huge amount of time to prepare because we are playing this match on Wednesday this week. Normally we have a whole week to play, but just because of availabilities, we're playing on Wednesday. It's quite early in the week. I've not had a huge amount of time. And the second reason is because I know I'm already locked in for Top Cut, I don't need to potentially reveal techs that I might want to use in later matches. So instead, I'm just going bog standard, and I think also Psy Spam has a pretty good matchup into my opponent's core. But let's have a quick deep dive into the specifics. We're going to start off with a Pokemon that is not part of my hard Trick Room mode, that being my Paldean Tauros. Tauros had a bit of a cameo last week, didn't get to show off its full potential, but still did good work in one of the games. This time around is probably going to be a similar story. I don't think it's going to be the focus of my strategy this week, but it definitely could play a role. So this set is largely what you might expect on a Tauros into this. It's got Intimidate, which is obviously good into all the physical attackers on my opponent's team. The exception to that is obviously King Gambit, which with its Defiant ability would actually get an attack boost from my Intimidate rather than an attack drop. So to counteract that, I am running the Mirror Herb item, which one time only will copy any positive stat changes that your opponent gets. So that means if I switch in my Tauros on King Gambit, Intimidate will drop its attack by 1, and then Defiant will boost its attack by 2. So King Gambit will end up at +1, but my Tauros will copy only the +2 attack increase from Defiant, so my Tauros will end up at +2. And similarly, if my opponent clicks Howl with Gouging Fire at any point, that's going to give my Tauros a +2 boost as well. So combined with its defensive typing, which kind of sits in front of King Gambit reasonably easily, this is going to be a good option to try and take down that physical mode if I'm not leaning into hard Trick Room. In terms of moves, I've just gone for double stab moves, and I've gone Rock Slide here because of the number of ice types, and also Galarian Moltres. There's a few Pokemon here that are weak to ice. Also just gives me flinch chances against some of the slower Pokemon, which is always something you can lean into if you desperately need an out. I'm not sure it's likely to come up, but there's also the option of using Raging Bull to break through Aurora Veil, which could be handy, but again, I think that's maybe a little bit more niche. My other fast mode Pokemon is my Walking Wake. So Walking Wake here, going for the Booster Energy item and an EV spread that gives it a speed boost when it gets that Booster Energy off. This allows it to outspeed a potential speed boost to Gouging Fire, which is something my opponent could very well be inclined to bring, because otherwise Gouging Fire is slower than Tauros, for example, and them having Speed Booster on their Gouging Fire would allow them to move before Ogerpon to get Howl off. So the Howl Breaking Swipe sets pretty much always will be using a Speed Booster set, which Walking Wake outspeeds and obviously threatens to KO with a Draco Meteor, for example. Speed Booster also means I'm guaranteed to outspeed Ninetales. If Articuno is running Tailwind and it's running more bulk than speed, then Speed Booster Walking Wake can actually outspeed Articuno even if my opponent has a Tailwind up. I've just gone for max speed and almost max special attack here. I can't quite go max special attack because if I do, then I get a special attack boost from my Booster Energy, which is not what I want. I want the speed boost. But I was running through some calcs. I couldn't find anything that was particularly relevant in terms of bulk, so I've just gone for maximum damage. And then I'm running Terrifier with Flamethrower and Hydro Steam to round out the set, which threatens most of my opponent's Pokemon pretty hard. The Snow Pokemon, a lot of Ninetales and Articuno, and King Gambit as well, are all threatened by fire moves. And then Hydro Steam is nice for threatening a potential Rhydon, which is a Pokemon I think my opponent very well could bring to this matchup. So Walking Wake rounds out my fast mode with strong offensive coverage, very good special attack, and the option to just clean up a late game potentially, or fire a bunch of damage down in the early game to make my back end more threatening. The core of my strategy this week, though, is going to be in DD. So we've all seen Psy Spam teams before. You lead in DD plus one of your Trick Room setters, you click Follow Me, you click Trick Room, you get your Torkoal in the back, you click a big eruption and an expanding force, and your opponent is forced to deal with it. And that is just exactly what I'm doing this week. Unlike in previous weeks, my opponent doesn't have a reliable way to get rid of my Psychic Terrain. They don't have anything that could set it on switch in. They don't have a Prankster user that can use Misty Terrain. Their only option, in fact, is to click Grassy Terrain on Ogerpon. But Ogerpon doesn't really have the move slot spare to be clicking Grassy Terrain. What that means is that even though this strategy is a little bit obvious, the hard trick room strategy, which is why I didn't bring it in previous weeks, is because people will tech for it. They'll have a terrain here or there, they'll have wide guard somewhere, they'll have a super slow Pokemon that underspeeds my stuff. But there are no such options in this particular instance, so it's a little bit safe for me to go for. I've gone bog standard moveset on the Indeedee here. I've gone Psyshock over Psychic just so I can hit Terra Water over on Wellspring a bit harder if it gets its special defense boost, because that is going to be something that's a bit annoying for me to deal with. And then the rest of the moveset is exactly what you'd expect. I've gone Mental Herb just because there's a few Pokemon that can click Taunt on this team. Mostly Moltres and Ogerpon are the ones I'm scared of. And I've gone Terra Water here because Terra Dark looked pretty inviting, but the problem with that is if my opponent does bring Slitherwing, then I've no way of stopping myself just getting KO'd by a Leech Life. So I've gone for Terra Water instead as like a standard neutral defensive Terra. Indeedee is the core of the strategy, but Indeedee's best pal is Armarouge, running Heatwave, Expanding Force, Trick Room, and Wide Guard this week. So Armarouge is going to be running Terra Dark. I kind of mentioned that on Indeedee. Terra Dark I think is a little bit safer on Armarouge because it's not weak to Bug to start with. Terra Dark also gives me a resist to the Dark moves that could be thrown out by King Gambit or Galarian Moltres, which are kind of the big things I'm scared of here. Terra Dark also lets me resist Dark-type moves from King Gambit and Galarian Moltres, which are the big things that are obviously going to be trying to sit in front of my Expanding Forces, as well as just being a reasonable neutral type into things like Ogerpon and Rhydon. Flashfire Armarouge is actually super good here into Gouging Fire, because normally Gouging Fire, if it wants to be dishing out big damage, is dependent on Heat Crash, because its other attacking options just aren't quite as strong, like Dragon Claw's not hitting as hard most of the time. But because I've got Flash Fire, that takes that option off the table. It also means it's risky for my opponent to click fire moves into any of my other Pokemon. Like, if my opponent wants to go for a Heat Crash into Gallade and I switch in an Armarouge on that slot, then that becomes a problem for them. The moveset's very simple. Double Stab, Heat Wave, Expanding Force, just clicking as much spread damage as I can. Trick Room, because I want Trick Room. And then Wide Guard lets me get around potentially Galarian Moltres lead if I lead it next to Indeedee, because otherwise Fiery Wrath is a little bit annoying. And then Life Orb just maximizes my damage output. It allows me to pick up big KOs with helping out Expanding Force into stuff like Rhydon. It lets me get King Gambit with Heat Wave. Lets me get Ogerpon Wellspring with terrain boosted Expanding Force, so that damage boost very worth it in this case. The other Psychic type that is going to be trying to abuse that Psychic terrain is going to be Gallade, running Sacred Sword, Psycho Cut, Trick Room, and Protect. Again, incredibly standard. Terra Water for similar reasons to Indeedee, gives me good neutral typing into a lot of what my opponent's going to go for. And Covert Cloak I think is a pretty fun idea here, just because Gallade often wants to run Clear Amulet, and my opponent does have ways of dropping my stats, mostly with Breaking Swipe on Gouging Fire. So Covert Cloak lets me stop that, but it also means I get around things like flinches from Moltres and freezes from the Snow Core, which I think are also things that can really potentially swing a game in my opponent's favor. So just having a way of guaranteeing I'm not going to get hit by those secondary effects is super nice. There's potentially also like Rock Slide flinches from Rhydon if I have Trick Room up and my opponent has Rhydon in. And if for some reason they bring Pheasantipity, it means that I can't get poisoned by Toxic Chain. So there's a few applications on this team, it just felt worth it. And lastly, what I'm anticipating will be the big damage dealer on my team, Torkoal. Torkoal again running a very standard set of Eruption, Heat Wave, Solar Beam, and Protect. Reason I want Solar Beam here is because of the Rhydon. So Rhydon could potentially go for a Terra Water here, for example, to get around things like water moves from my Walking Wake, whilst also not leaving themselves weak to fire on my Torkoal. And if they do go for Terra Water, that allows me to punish it with Solar Beam. Maybe Protect needs to be Earth Power as well, actually. Maybe I just change this Torkoal set right before I start the match. I don't know how much of a use case I actually get out of Protect here. Can you tell I've done less testing for this week than I have for previous weeks? I'll figure it out. Maybe the Torkoal set will change a little bit, but fundamentally it'll work the same. It'll be Terra Fire, it wants to click Eruption. If it can't click Eruption, it'll click something else. So that is the team. The general strategy is going to be leading Indeedee plus one of my Psy Spam users. There is the option of leading maybe Tauros plus Walking Wake and going for that mode, but I'm going to be leaning pretty heavily into Psy Spam, I think, unless my opponent shows me something that could really be an obstacle for that. But the only way to find out is to jump into the battle. Editor bwenty here. Just a quick note that I managed to completely mess up my recording for this. So the first, like, half or so of Game 1, I was, instead of recording the game footage, just recording my damage calculator, which isn't very interesting viewing. So for the first part of Game 1, I will be using Collin's footage, so it will be flipped, and it'll be from someone else's perspective from the start of Game 1 until about halfway through, but I'll still be using my own audio, and then I'll just flip it back once I have the footage available myself. Sorry if it's a little bit confusing, but that's the situation. Okay, we're in. There is an Articuno, but otherwise this is pretty much exactly what I was expecting, I think. Water, Moltres, Fairy Gouging, Water. Okay, so it's... Oh, Terra Ice Ninetales is interesting. But yeah, it's Fairy Gouging, Ice Ninetales, everything else is Water. Which makes sense, good thing I have Solar Beam on my Torkoal. No Gambit is interesting. So that means I'm reasonably free to start clicking E-Force. I think I go Gallade lead here. I think is the game plan. Because it seems likely there's going to be a Moltres lead. And if there is a Moltres lead, I want to be able to not flinch and also not have to Terra and also not get snarled. Seems not unreasonable to me. Make sure I actually click A before the time runs out. Okay. A-Tails. Articuno. Right on. Okay, so you're going to see on Moltres. This is, yeah, about right. Moltres again in lead game 1. Okay. I think this is just a pretty simple follow me protect, right? Oh, sorry, follow me TR. I don't think there's really much reason to go for anything else. Follow me. Yes, Cudgel. Fine. Use plot, okay. He's scheming, okay. It's potentially a bit annoying. I will Sacred here, and I will... I think I'm just helping him Sacred, right? Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay. Ah, fuck, yeah. That makes sense. That makes less sense. But I'm fine with it. Okay. Right. I think I can still just help against Sacred, right? Let's follow me up. Yeah, it's gone. Spiky. Wrath, that's fine. Galate should tank this. Oh, wow. Okay. Moltres is like bad. Gotcha. Pretty easy talk switch in. And Wrath, okay. Am I content to just Sacred Moltres and Solar Beam the Rhydon? I think I am, right? I think that's fine. Send it. They could double tech here, so I could reposition to get around the double tech. Wouldn't be the worst idea. Well, I don't think I've not revealed Protect on Gallade yet. Or White God for that matter. I'm guessing Terra Moltres. Yeah. I'm assuming what this is going to be is it's going to be Terra Moltres. I'm recording it. No shot I had that up. I'm so sorry, gang. That's horrendous. I may have to steal some footage for the start of that. Okay, hope this goes. Yeah. I'll get my Sacred Sword off. You see a Citrus, maybe? Yeah, okay. Okay. Wrath. Oh, this might actually... This will KO now, won't it? Okay, Torkoal lives. That's good. There's 9 kills, okay. I wonder if this is specs then. That's one time left on TR, one time left on Psychic. Okay. I mean, this time there's no reason not to just go for, like, E4 C-Wave, right? That's just the way it is. Also Protect. Doesn't like have Protect. It does, okay. That's annoying. I have an issue now where I can't Solar Beam. I said I have Protect on Torque, which is going to be annoying. Do I have a win condition here? I think win... Do I bother revealing Wide Guard? Because if I Wide Guard here, do I ever get any value out of it? Am I ever getting value out of clicking Wide Guard here? I don't think so. I think I just let it rock and see if I can get any damage down. I could also bluff specs on Torque. Might have been worth doing. Yeah, Moltres is annoying. Okay. Getting him in block. Oh my god, okay. That did a lot. Yeah, Rush Fire Wrath. Okay. Okay. That's fine. That lead didn't work so good. Gonna go for the Wake lead. I wonder if the play's just a Helping Hand Sacred on turn 1, actually. Tauros seems reasonable, but not amazing here. I could try it. Go like Torkoal Wake. Oh, sorry, Tauros Wake. I keep making that mistake, keep messing the two of them up. I don't think that lead really does that much into... I don't think my lead there really does that much into them. I could go for... I don't think going like Gallade, leaving Armor Rouge behind and doing this seems alright. If I do the same thing, but I just go for Big Swing at Moltres turn 1, I think that's alright. I think Helping Hand and Big Swing at Moltres on turn 1 and then go for the slow back end seems not unreasonable. Oh, sorry, go for the fast back end with Sun. Because that Moltres is still so annoying. I need to, like, if I'm going for this, I need to clear Moltres turn 1, which is annoying. You're right on Moltres. Okay. They do have Protect turn 1. Is worth noting. I think they think I'm going to try and guarantee TR here. So I'm just going to go for Sacred and Helping here. If they protect, they protect. Let's have a look. That's 5 damage. And Sacred. Okay. Moltres gone, that's nice. I'm guessing this is just going to be horsepower now into Oh, EQ, that's fine. I mean, now I just go Wake, right? Oh, come on, yeah. Fine. Wait, no, this is bad. This is really quite bad. Funnily enough, this would be a great time to Torkoal. Yeah, the problem is Indeedee just goes down here, right? Do they just double swing it Indeedee? I don't hate the idea of just going Draco Meteor here in Helping Hand. Is that going to KO? Probably not, right? No, it's not. Okay. Well, have a lot less for death, maybe it will. Yeah, it's never KO'd. This is not a good move. It's Terra Water, obviously. Which means they are going to double down my Indeedee, almost certainly. Okay. I whiff. Okay, well that's going to wrap it up. I think that's just Jeej. Cudgel. I die. Oh, they crit me. I'm 100% dead. Right. EQ. Yeah, the miss there was not ideal. It's not over. It's not over. How should I go into an Ogerpon? Spring. In hindsight, I should have actually just gone for the Draco into Ogerpon that previous turn. Yeah, I'm going to Draco this, and I will try and solo beam the right on and see what happens. If I get a crit here or something. Man, if I was special attack booster, I'd be laughing all the way to the bank. I was really tempted to go special attack booster. Interesting. They know I'm not specs. Let me Draco them. I guess you just KO the Wake here, right? Yeah, it's player off. Okay. That tracks. Oh, Terra Water Blade was so safe in front of that if I'd known. Yeah. That's game. Alright, I got fucking rinsed. Oh well. They risk EQing themselves. Maybe. If they EQ themselves and somehow don't KO, who knows? Cudgel. Oh, I'm dead. Am I dead? I'm dead to Ninetales. Oh, that was power as well. Alright. GG's. I got rinsed. Well, that was all over rather quickly. Not that I much mind. Do kind of wish I'd given him a bit more of a challenge, just because it would have been nice to have a bit more of a game. But, like I said, I'm guaranteed minimum second, so I'm not too upset about it. And the plus side is that I've learned some lessons for if I play him again in playoffs, if he makes it. Which he might not still. But, we'll see. Yeah, I didn't put enough stock into anti-Moltres stuff. But I tried to run it with what seemed like hyper-obvious things, and I guess this is a good example of why running hyper-obvious stuff in draft often doesn't work. Moltres just kind of sat in front of me, and I got roasted. I mean, there were a couple of turns there where I could have made calls one way or the other. I had Protect on Glade that I never revealed, so if I'd gone for, on one turn, for example, on the turn where they went, well, no, because they didn't Terra there. I think early, did they? Yeah, I guess there's a situation where maybe I go for, if I'm calling Follow Me on the turn that my Glade went down in game 1, I had potentially like Psyshock into the Ogerpon, get some damage down on that, and then Indeedee drops, and I bring in my Torkoal, and now their Ogerpon's in range of Eruption. So I can then just go like Terrifier or up to Sacred Sword. And that ends up being alright. Because then Armourouge just cleans up that endgame somewhat decently. I guess Rhydon's still a bit annoying. I mean, Rhydon was about as annoying as I thought it would be. Again, I didn't put enough stock in dealing with that, which, you know, lesson learned. I mean, it also shows that I don't do as well when I don't put as much prep time in, which is not anything that anyone is surprised by, but it really does make a difference when you don't really think stuff through that deeply. And again, I was like, that was not out of disrespect for my opponent or anything like that. I just didn't have a huge amount of time between last match and this match, and I have other stuff going on in my life outside of Draft League, and given that I was already through, I made the conscious decision to not put as much prep into it, which, you know, obviously I did worse. Does mean it's a little bit harder to analyse, though, is the thing, just because I can't really reflect on, like, oh, you know, the thing that I put a lot of time into didn't or did work, and here's why, or here's why it didn't, or whatever. Like, I kind of did the obvious stuff, and the obvious stuff wasn't amazing. That's just how it goes. I think Wake didn't feel very impactful. Like, the logic behind it made sense of getting around the Gouging Fire, but I think I have other ways around Gouging Fire, potentially. And also, Gouging Fire is just kind of a risky bring into me. I maybe could have leaned more into the Tauros mode as well. I think that might have been fine. Like, Terra Fairy Tauros in front of what my opponent brought in Game 2 would have been nice, in particular, like Hydro Steam Rock Slide, if I'd gone for the super fast front-end mode. I probably should have utilised that a lot more than I did. And by more than I did, I mean at all, because I didn't utilise it even remotely. And so I could have stuck to my guns and tested that a little bit more. Like, I think the bluff in Game 2, going for the Glade in DD mode made sense, but yeah, it just didn't pan out. And I put too much stock in Walking Weight, given that Ogerpon exists, which obviously you can just kind of absorb hits from it without too much problem. I think that maybe Special Attack Booster would have been better, just because the Speed Booster at no point ever really felt like it was going to be a factor, whereas I think Special Attack Booster could have given me some like Draco Calcs that would have been relevant. I always ended up going Earth Power on Torkoal rather than Protect. I got a little bit punished for it. I don't think Protect in the end game in Game 1 would have made any difference, or in Game 2. For that matter. I think having Earth Power to cover certain options like Terra Fires and stuff like that was perfectly reasonable. Yeah, sorry this video ended up being a little bit scuffed because of the recording in Game 1. Sorry I didn't give you guys that much of a game this week, or that much analysis post-game, really. But next Draft League match is playoffs, and that's where the real stuff starts. This match, for me personally, doesn't really make any difference fundamentally. If I win it, I'm guaranteed first, and if I lose it, I'm at worst second going into playoffs, so it doesn't really make a difference. But next week is when it starts getting interesting, especially because we will have a repeat match. No matter who we play next week, we will have played them before, because I've now played everyone who still remains in the league. And I think repeat matches in draft leagues are incredibly interesting. So I strongly recommend tuning in for that one. If you want to keep up to date with that, then please do drop a subscription to the channel if you haven't done so already. Please do like this video if you found it entertaining, even if it wasn't the most informative Draft League content I've ever made in my life. Hopefully it was still enjoyable. And that is going to be all for the group stages of the MDBL. I will see you all next time for playoffs. Do not miss it. Bye-bye.